Graduation day was supposed to be one of the biggest moments of my life. For years of sleepless nights, stress headaches, part-time jobs, and constant self-doubt, all leading up to that one walk across the stage. I pictured it so many times. My name being called, hearing the cheers from the crowd, looking over and seeing my family standing there. Proud, maybe even tearing up a little. But when the day finally came, they weren't there. I should have known. The signs were always there, but I kept making excuses for them. That's what you do when it's your family, right? You tell yourself they didn't mean it like that. That they love you in their own way. That next time will be different. It never was. 2 weeks before graduation, I was sitting at the kitchen table during one of my rare visits home. My dad was scrolling through his phone, barely acknowledging me, while my mom was excitedly flipping through a glossy travel brochure. "We're thinking of booking the cruise for the first week of June," my mom said, her voice light and breezy, like she wasn't about to drop a bomb on me. I blinked. June? That's when my graduation is. My mom didn't even look up. "Oh, honey, we've been planning this for months." "No, you have," I shot back, trying to keep my voice steady. "You never mentioned it to me." That's when my dad chimed in, not even glancing away from whatever video he was watching. "It's just a piece of paper. You don't need us there to pick it up." I laughed, but it wasn't because anything was funny. It was that hollow, disbelieving laugh when you realize that deep down, you're not even surprised. "Right. Just a piece of paper," I repeated, my throat tightening. My sister, Emma, walked in at that moment, earbuds in, barely registering the tension in the room. She glanced at me, then at my mom, sensing something but, as usual, deciding it wasn't her problem. "They've been dying to go on this cruise," she said, shrugging. "You'll have other graduations." That's when I knew they didn't get it, or worse, they just didn't care. I didn't say much after that. What was the point? I drove back to campus that night, my chest burning with a mix of anger and something worse, that familiar ache of disappointment I had grown far too used to. When graduation day arrived, I still held on to a sliver of hope. Maybe they'd surprise me. Maybe they'd show up last minute, pretending they'd been planning it all along. But when I checked my phone that morning, all I had was a text from my mom. "Bon voyage. We'll be sipping margaritas by noon. So proud of you, sweetie. XO." No call. No, we wish we could be there. Just that. I sat through the ceremony alone. I watched classmates hugging their parents, posing for pictures, laughing with friends and family. I clapped for people I didn't know because it was easier than thinking about the empty seats where my family should have been. When they called my name, I walked across that stage, head high, heart heavy. I smiled for the photographer, diploma in hand, and when I stepped off, I didn't even bother looking around. There was no one waiting for me. That night, sitting alone in my apartment surrounded by balloons and flowers my roommate had kindly left for me before heading home for the weekend, I stared at my diploma. A piece of paper. That's all it was to them. But to me, it was proof. Proof that I had done something they never thought I could. That I had pushed through every dismissive comment, every backhanded joke, every time they made me feel like I wasn't enough. And that's when the idea hit me. If it was just a piece of paper, they could have it. But I wasn't going to send it alone. I pulled out a sheet of paper and wrote a short note. No anger. No begging for validation. Just a simple message. "Since you couldn't be there to celebrate, I thought I'd send you the souvenir. Oh, and since I know how little moments like this matter to you, I figured I'd also share what it cost me to get here, emotionally, not just financially." Attached to the note was a copy of my latest therapy bill. I'd been seeing a therapist for the past year, trying to untangle the mess of feelings that came from growing up in a house where achievements were ignored and emotions were inconveniences. I packed the diploma and the bill neatly into an envelope and mailed it to them the next morning. I thought that would be the end of it. A small act of closure. A way to say, "I see you for who you are now, and I'm done chasing after something you'll never give me." But 2 hours after the package was delivered, my phone started blowing up. It was Emma. Call after call, text after text. Messages like, "What did you do? You need to answer me now. Are you serious with this?" I didn't answer. I didn't owe her, or any of them, an explanation. Because by then, I had already made another decision. While they were off enjoying their cruise, I had been making plans of my own. I sold off a few things, drained what was left of my savings, and booked a one-way flight. Where to? Anywhere but here. As I sat at the airport, watching Emma's name light up my phone for the 10th time, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Freedom. I silenced my phone, took a deep breath, and boarded the plane, leaving behind not just a family who never showed up for me, but a version of myself that kept waiting for them to. And I had no intention of ever looking back. The first thing I noticed when I landed was how quiet everything felt. Not the airport, that was chaotic, like any other, but inside me. For once, my mind wasn't spinning with what-ifs or replaying old conversations where I tried to defend myself to people who weren't listening. It was just calm. I had chosen a city I'd never been to. No friends there, no family connections, nothing tying me down. That was the point. A fresh start where no one knew me as the daughter who could never take a joke or the sister who was too sensitive. The Airbnb I booked was small, barely more than a room with a kitchenette, but when I unlocked the door and stepped inside, it felt like a palace. Because it was mine, even if just for a week. I collapsed onto the bed, exhausted but wired at the same time. My phone buzzed in my pocket, and for a moment, I considered turning it off completely. But curiosity got the better of me. 17 missed calls from Emma. 5 from my mom. None from my dad. No surprise there. I opened Emma's text first. She was always the family's messenger, the one sent to smooth things over when my parents didn't want to get their hands dirty. You can't just disappear. Mom's freaking out. Dad's pissed. He says you're being dramatic. Where are you? We need to talk. I stared at the last message, feeling that old familiar tug, the part of me that still wanted to explain myself, to make them understand. But I stopped myself. What was there to explain? That I was tired of being treated like an afterthought? That I finally realized I didn't have to stick around for people who only noticed me when I made them uncomfortable? Instead, I sent a single reply. I'm fine. Don't worry about me. I knew that would drive them crazy, the vagueness, the lack of control. For the next few days, I wandered the city with no real plan. I visited parks, sat in coffee shops, watched strangers go about their lives. It felt surreal, like I was watching someone else's movie, but it was strangely comforting. No one here knew my story. No one expected me to shrink myself down to fit into their version of who I was supposed to be. But freedom has a funny way of bringing things to the surface. By the third night, as I sat alone with a takeout container and a cheap bottle of wine, the silence started to feel heavier. I wasn't sad exactly, more reflective. For the first time, I let myself really think about everything I'd been pushing down for years. I thought about the time in high school when I got accepted into an honors program, and my dad's only response was, "Don't let it go to your head." I thought about my mom missing parent-teacher nights because she had more important things, and Emma always being the golden child because she knew how to play along, how to laugh at the right moments and never make waves. And I thought about how every achievement of mine was met with indifference or sarcasm, like caring too much was embarrassing. That's when I realized mailing them my diploma wasn't revenge. It was closure. I wasn't punishing them. I was freeing myself. The next morning, I woke up to an unexpected email. It was from my therapist. Hi, name. I noticed you canceled your upcoming sessions. Just wanted to check in and see how you're doing. Remember, progress isn't always linear, but I'm proud of how far you've come. I smiled at that. She was right. I had canceled my sessions before leaving because I thought I needed distance from everything, including my past. But maybe healing wasn't about running away. Maybe it was about choosing what and who I allowed back into my life. Later that afternoon, as I was scrolling through job listings and rental ads, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was a message that made me pause. It wasn't from Emma or my parents. It was from my aunt, my mom's sister, Laura. We hadn't spoken in years, mostly because she distanced herself from the family drama long before I ever realized I should. She was always the black sheep, the one my mom gossiped about at the dinner table, calling her selfish for moving across the country and living life on her own terms. Her message was short but surprising. Heard about what happened. If you ever need a place to stay or someone to talk to, I'm here. Don't let them make you feel guilty for choosing yourself. I stared at the screen, my throat tightening. How did she even know? I hadn't told anyone where I was going, and I doubted my parents would reach out to her willingly. Before I could overthink it, I typed back, "Thank you. I might take you up on that." We ended up talking on the phone that night. For the first time, I heard stories about my family I'd never known, things that made a lot of their behavior make sense, patterns that went back generations. Laura told me how she'd been treated the same way when she was younger, dismissed, mocked, shut down every time she tried to carve her own path. I left because I knew they'd never change, she said, and staying would have only broken me more. I realized then that I wasn't alone, not really. There were people who understood, people who had made it out and built lives that weren't defined by constant emotional landmines. By the end of the call, Laura invited me to stay with her if I wanted a more permanent place to land. She lived a few states over, had a spare room, and more importantly, she got it. I told her I'd think about it, but in my heart, I already knew I would. The next day, I bought a bus ticket. It wasn't glamorous, but it felt right. This wasn't about running anymore. It was about moving forward, intentionally. As I packed my things, my phone lit up one last time with a message from Emma. "I don't know where you are, but Mom's been crying nonstop since she got your package. Dad won't talk about it, but you really messed things up. If you care at all about this family, you'll call us." I read it twice, feeling nothing. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel guilt. I didn't feel the urge to apologize or smooth things over. Instead, I powered off my phone, threw my bag over my shoulder, and walked out the door, knowing that whatever came next, it would be on my terms. I wasn't the girl waiting for them to notice me anymore. I was done waiting. When the bus pulled into Laura's town, I felt a strange mix of nerves and relief. It wasn't home, not yet, but it felt like a lifeline. A place to breathe without constantly watching my back for emotional sucker punches. Laura greeted me at the station with a hug that lasted longer than I expected. It wasn't awkward, though. It felt safe, like she knew exactly what I needed without me having to say it. Her house was modest but cozy. Plants in every corner, shelves lined with books, photos of friends and trips scattered around, not a single family portrait in sight. I couldn't help but notice that. "Make yourself at home," she said, showing me to the guest room. "Stay as long as you need." I wanted to tell her how much that meant to me, but the words got stuck in my throat. So I just nodded, swallowing the lump that had formed. Over the next few days, Laura and I settled into an easy rhythm. She worked from home as a graphic designer, and I spent my time updating my resume, applying for jobs, and for the first time in forever, actually thinking about what I wanted, not what would make my family approve. One evening, as we were having dinner on her porch, Laura finally asked the question I'd been avoiding. "Have you decided what you're going to do about them?" I didn't need her to clarify who them was. I poked at my food, thinking, I don't know. Part of me feels like I should call, just to. I don't know. Get closure? But another part of me thinks there's no point. Laura leaned back in her chair, watching me carefully. You don't owe them a thing. But if you do reach out, make sure it's for you, not because you feel guilty. That word, guilty, hit harder than I expected. Because even after everything, that guilt was still there, like a shadow I couldn't quite shake. I knew I hadn't done anything wrong, but years of conditioning don't disappear overnight. Later that night, I found myself scrolling through old photos on my phone. Family holidays, birthdays, random snapshots where we all wore those fake smiles for the camera. I stared at one from my high school graduation, me standing between my parents, holding my certificate, while my dad gave his classic half smirk and my mom looked more interested in something off camera. I remembered how that day felt, how I had waited for some sign of pride, some genuine acknowledgement. Instead, I got a pat on the back and a joke about how they couldn't believe I actually passed. I deleted the photo without hesitation. That small act felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. The next morning, I woke up to an email from a company I had applied to, a marketing assistant position. They wanted to schedule an interview. It wasn't my dream job, but it was a start. A chance to build something on my own, away from the weight of expectations and dismissals. Laura was thrilled when I told her. She insisted on helping me prep, even offering to lend me one of her blazers. As I got ready for the interview, I noticed my phone, which I'd mostly kept off, flashing with a few notifications. Against my better judgment, I turned it on. There were more messages from Emma. The latest one was different, though. You think you're so independent now, but you're still running away. You're just proving Dad right. You're weak. I stared at the words, feeling that old sting, the kind that used to leave me questioning everything. But this time, something shifted. I wasn't angry. I wasn't hurt. I was done. I typed back a response I never thought I'd have the courage to send. I'm not running away. I'm choosing peace. If you ever want to understand that, you know where to find me. But I'm done playing this game. I hit send and immediately blocked her number. Then I blocked my parents too. I knew that might seem drastic to some people, cutting off your whole family, but unless you've lived it, you don't understand how freeing it is to finally silence the voices that only ever tore you down. The interview went well. Better than I expected, honestly. A week later, I got the call offering me the job. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine, earned without anyone's help, without anyone's approval. Laura and I celebrated with takeout and cheap champagne, laughing until our sides hurt. For the first time in my life, I felt like I was building something real, a life that wasn't dictated by guilt or fear. But just when I thought I had closed that chapter for good, something unexpected happened. A letter arrived in Laura's mailbox, addressed to me in my mother's handwriting. I almost tossed it without opening it, but curiosity got the better of me. Inside was a single sheet of paper. No apology. No acknowledgement of anything they'd done. Just one sentence. When you're done being dramatic, you'll come home. We'll be waiting. I laughed, actually laughed, as I crumpled the letter and threw it in the trash. They still didn't get it. But that was no longer my problem. I wasn't going home. Because for the first time, I realized I was already there. It's funny how people talk about going no contact, like it's flipping a switch, like you block a few numbers, delete some photos, and suddenly you're free. What they don't tell you is how quiet it gets afterward. How you still reach for your phone out of habit when something happens, good or bad, and realize there's no default number to call anymore. How you catch yourself wondering if they even notice you're gone, before reminding yourself that it doesn't matter. But over time, the silence stops feeling empty. It starts feeling peaceful. That's how it was for me. Weeks passed, then months. I settled into my new job, which was nothing glamorous but stable. Laura became more than just family. She became a friend, a mentor, someone who showed me what life could look like when you weren't constantly bracing for emotional impact. I found a small apartment nearby, nothing fancy, but every piece of furniture I dragged and felt like a trophy. Mine. Paid for by me. Chosen by me. I even started going back to therapy, this time with a local counselor. Not because I was drowning, but because I wanted to keep swimming in the right direction. For once, I wasn't surviving. I was living. But of course, family doesn't let go that easily, especially when they realize they've lost control. It was late October when Emma found a new way to reach me. I was walking home from work, the air crisp with that early bite of fall, when I noticed a message request on my social media. I had locked everything down, changed usernames, deleted old accounts, but she still found me. Her message was short, but loaded. You made your point. Can we talk now? I stood on the sidewalk, staring at the screen, feeling a storm of emotions brewing: anger, sadness, but mostly exhaustion. I hadn't made a point. I had left. There was a difference. I ignored it. Days later, another message came. Mom's not doing well. She misses you. That one almost worked. Almost. But I knew better. I knew the pattern, the guilt trips wrapped in concern, the vague mentions of health or family obligations, designed to pull me back in. Laura noticed I was quieter than usual that night. You heard from them, didn't you? She asked, pouring us both a glass of wine. I nodded, scrolling through the messages again, like I was waiting for them to change. I don't get it, I admitted. They never cared before. Why now? Laura gave me a knowing look. Because now they know they can't reach you. People like that don't panic when you're upset. They panic when you stop giving them access. Her words hit hard. I realized Emma wasn't reaching out because she missed me. She was reaching out because, for the first time in our lives, I wasn't playing my role. The sensitive one. The one who always came back, no matter how many times they pushed me away. That night, I typed out a message to Emma. I didn't send it right away. I let it sit there, reading it over and over until I was sure. I hope Mom is okay. Truly. But I'm not coming back, not now, not ever. This isn't about making a point. It's about protecting myself. I wish you the best, but please stop contacting me. I won't respond again. I hit send. Then I blocked her account. It didn't feel triumphant. It didn't feel like some grand victory. It just felt necessary. The holidays came and went without incident. No more messages. No surprise visits. Just quiet. And in that quiet, I found parts of myself I didn't know existed. I started painting again, something I hadn't done since I was a kid, back when my dad told me it was a waste of time. Laura encouraged it, even cleared a space in her garage for me to set up a little studio. I made new friends, people who knew me as me, not as the person I was forced to be in that house I left behind. I began to see a future that didn't involve constantly second-guessing my worth. But just when I thought I had fully closed the door on my past, life had one more curveball to throw. It was a random Tuesday when I got a letter in the mail, not from my parents, not from Emma. It was from a lawyer. At first, my stomach dropped. My mind raced with worst-case scenarios. Were they suing me for something ridiculous? Trying to drag me back into their drama through legal means? I tore open the envelope, heart pounding. Inside was a formal notice regarding my grandfather's estate, a man I barely knew, my father's estranged father. He had passed away months ago, apparently, and left behind a modest inheritance. But that wasn't the shock. The letter stated that, out of all his descendants, I was the sole beneficiary. Confused, I read further. There was a note attached, written in shaky handwriting, clearly penned before he died. I heard what they did. I know what it's like to be cast aside by your own blood. Use this to build the life they never wanted you to have. Granddad. I sat there, stunned. I barely had memories of him. He'd been painted as the villain in every story my dad ever told. Distant. Cold. Not worth your time, my father would say. But now, I was starting to see the pattern. Maybe he wasn't the villain after all. Maybe he'd just been the first one to walk away, and I was the second. The inheritance wasn't life-changing money, but it was enough. Enough to clear my debts, invest in myself, maybe even turn my painting hobby into something more. When I told Laura, she just smiled knowingly. Looks like you're not the only black sheep in the family, she said, raising her glass. I laughed, a real, deep laugh, feeling a strange sense of connection to a man I never truly knew, but who seemed to understand me better than my immediate family ever did. That night, I sat in my little makeshift studio, brush in hand, thinking about how far I'd come. I thought about that girl who sat alone on graduation day, clutching a diploma that no one cared about. The girl who mailed it off along with a therapy bill as a final, desperate attempt to be seen. And I realized I didn't need them to see me anymore. I saw myself, clearly, fully, and I was proud of what I saw. I always thought closure would come with some big, dramatic moment, a confrontation, maybe. Words shouted across a table, years of pain spilled out in one final argument where I'd finally get to say everything I'd rehearsed in my head 1,000 times. But closure didn't come like that. It came quietly, in the form of distance, time, and truth. A few months after receiving my grandfather's letter and inheritance, life felt steady. I wasn't rich, but I was comfortable for the first time. I paid off my student loans, bought better supplies for my painting, and even enrolled in a local art program Laura encouraged me to join. I had built something solid, a life that was mine, free from the strings my family used to pull. But then, out of nowhere, the past found a way to sneak back in. It started with a message request on LinkedIn, of all places. From a name I didn't recognize at first, Rachel Whitman. It took me a second to place her. Rachel was my dad's old business partner's daughter. We'd met a few times growing up, mostly at Dole Company picnics where I'd sit alone while my dad talked shop. Curious, I opened the message. Hey, I hope this isn't too weird. I know we don't really know each other, but I thought you should see this. I ran into your parents at a fundraiser last weekend. They mentioned you, and, well, I'll just let you read it for yourself. Attached was a screenshot. It was a social media post from my mother. At first glance, it looked like any other proud parent post. A photo of my diploma, the one I had mailed to them months ago, framed and hanging on their wall. The caption made my stomach turn. So proud of our daughter for all her hard work. She's off pursuing her dreams, thanks to our endless support and love. Hashtag proud parents, hashtag family first. I stared at the screen, my hands shaking, not with sadness, but pure disbelief. Endless support and love? They had skipped my graduation, mocked my achievements, dismissed my therapy, my struggles, my worth. And now, they were parading my success as if they'd been behind me every step of the way. I felt sick. Rachel's follow-up message came through seconds later. I didn't know what was really going on until I asked around. Emma's been telling people you're traveling the world on their dime, that you needed space, but that they funded everything because they believe in you. I figured you should know. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. The audacity was staggering. They hadn't just ignored me. They'd rewritten the narrative entirely. To their friends, their colleagues, they were the picture-perfect parents who let their daughter spread her wings. I paced my apartment, heart racing, 1,000 thoughts running through my head. I wanted to scream, to expose them, to post the real story everywhere they couldn't control. But then, I stopped. What would that accomplish? Who was I trying to convince? Anyone who mattered already knew the truth. Laura knew. My therapist knew. I knew. And wasn't that the point of all this? I didn't need their approval anymore. So why give them space in my head? I was about to delete the conversation when Rachel sent one last message. Also, I overheard something. Your dad was bragging about how he taught you tough love, and how cutting you off financially was the best thing they ever did. Thought you'd want to know what they're really telling people. That part didn't surprise me. It just confirmed what I had always suspected, that, in their eyes, I wasn't a daughter. I was a prop in whatever story made them look good. I thanked Rachel for telling me and closed the app. I sat in silence for a long time, staring at the blank canvas on my easel. My mind wasn't racing anymore. It was oddly clear. They could spin whatever stories they wanted. They could hang that diploma on their wall and tell their friends they were the reason behind it. Let them. Because deep down, they knew the truth, too. And that was a weight they'd have to carry, not me. A week later, I made a decision I never thought I'd make. I legally changed my last name. It wasn't a dramatic act of rebellion. It was a quiet declaration of independence. A way to sever that final thread connecting me to a family that only saw me as an extension of themselves. Laura was the first person I told. "I'm proud of you," she said, hugging me tight. "Welcome to the family, for real this time." With my new name, I launched a small online store selling my artwork. Nothing big, but it felt symbolic, putting my name, my real name, on something I created without anyone else's shadow looming over me. Orders trickled in, and with every sale, I felt a little lighter. Months passed, and the messages stopped for good. Either they gave up, or they realized they no longer had any power over me. Then, one quiet afternoon, I received a package in the mail. No return address. Inside was my diploma, the same frame from the photo, but now cracked in one corner, like it had been ripped off the wall in haste. Taped to the glass was a sticky note with 2 words written in my father's unmistakable handwriting. "Your problem." I stared at it, a slow smile creeping across my face. He thought this was some kind of insult, a final jab. But what he didn't realize was, it wasn't my problem anymore. I didn't need that piece of paper to validate me. I didn't need them to validate me. I set the frame down, grabbed my phone, and took a picture, not to post, not to share, but to remind myself how far I'd come. Then I tossed it in the trash. That night, as I worked on a new painting, a vibrant, messy explosion of color and freedom, I thought about all the versions of myself I had left behind. The girl desperate for approval. The woman weighed down by guilt. The daughter who thought love had to be earned through silence and endurance. They were gone. I wasn't running anymore. I was flying.